Okay, so here I am. This is where I'm at. Front cover's off. You can see the timing, chain, gear, or sprocket, whatever you want to call them. This is one of them cams where the button actually doesn't keep the cam from walking up against the front cover. This one actually has, I can't really get you in there, but right where my finger is, there's a bolt there, and there's a bolt over there that has this little locking C that goes into a groove in the cam to keep the cam from walking any which way. So if you're pulling the cam out, that's what you had to do, but you would also have to have all the lifters out to pull the cam out. But I'm just changing the timing set here. So the timing set, there's a groove right at the end of my finger on that sprocket, and the groove for this sprocket is right there, which tells me it's on number 6, top dead center number 6. Because the crank is at top dead center, but the cam is 180 degrees where it should be. Because I believe these timing marks have to line up to each other to be on top dead center number 1. So I'll do that once I clean everything. I'll move that around, take that off, and clean everything. So on and so forth. How to remove this. It's just easy to remove this because I already had 2 bolts out and the third one was there. Because this bolt here hits the fan hub mounting plate. The only way to really get it off is to wiggle it out. And that's the only other bolt that mounts to that whole thing, and then you can just literally just take that off. Now remember, I don't have any AC stuff in my system, so that's just sitting there. So here's the cover. As you can see, it's a little dirty, but I'll clean that up at work because solvent tank. If I remember correctly, this engine runs clockwise. So we got this plastic piece here that sort of puts tension on the chain. And I'm not sure, I don't think there's one on the slack side. That's why it's got so much slack there. As you can see, there's a good amount of sludge in this. The oil change was not very good on this motor, but oh well. That's where your timing marks would be if they weren't all caked up with crap, if you had a distributor. As you can see there it looks like the front dampener was actually contacting the front cover a bit. It's not through, just a very little bit. Be changing the front seal as well. Now, to get the front dampener off, you have to undo that single bolt that goes in the crankshaft. But you can't it just doesn't pop right off. The easiest way to get it off is use one of these. This is a puller. And the bolts used on the puller to go into the 3 holes here, 1, 2, 3, are standard bolts, 5/16 coarse thread. Mine are a little short, but it was you gotta have them a little short because of where everything is, because I had to use a wrench. Right up in here type area, I had a wrench that was just pulling it off. Actually pulled off quite nicely. Didn't fight it or anything. But really one of these pullers is really necessary, or else you're going to be at it for a really long time and you might not even get it done. So that's where I'm at. I'm going to be cleaning that up. I do have a new dampener because of that contact, but also this rubber. In a few spots it's really like cracked. It might not look that bad. I think over here you can kind of see cracking in the rubber. That means this dampener is pretty old. I think the new one was about 40 or 50 bucks. As well as right there you see that shiny spot on the dampener. That's where the front seal rides. Now, a front seal can cut a groove in this thing. If you are reusing your dampener, you can sort of clean that up and put a sleeve on it for the seal rides. But since dampener's not that expensive, and the rubber is already coming apart a little bit, and for some reason was contacting the front cover, I'll just put a new one on. So that's where I'm at. Clean that up, and then when I put it on there, I'll show you how to time the engine, which is actually quite simple on these. Really just quite simple. So I'm going to have that all stuff cleaned up, and then we'll get back to you when we actually are putting the new timing set on and timing it. Because really it's just this one bolt on the cam, take off. This should just slide off. Maybe it's going to need some help with the pry bar, but should just slide off. And both the dampener and this sprocket have keys in them. They're keyed. There's a slot in the crank, so they're keyed. But that should slide right off, and this just unbolts off. So let me clean everything, and you'll basically come back to when I put the new timing chain set on. Alright, let me get to that. Okay, so here's where I'm at. The new timing chain and sprockets are all on there. You just undo this bolt, take the old one off. That should slide right off the crankshaft. That's keyed along with the dampeners keyed. They only go in there one way. Same with the cam. When you take it off, there's a keyway on the sprocket that goes into a groove on the cam. Everything is keyed, so it only can go on one way. Now you might be wondering how you time the engine. Well, the engine, there's two timing marks, one on the cam sprocket and crank sprocket. Right under my finger there's a dot. Same here, there's a dot. You line those dots up, the engine will be timed. Keyway at 12 o'clock means top dead center. And really, give you a better idea, here's the old one. As you can see, that line, they both line up with that tooth. Basically, you're just lining up that tooth and that tooth, and the engine will be timed. You can see the key for the old sprocket on the cam. They only go on one way. Best way to make sure it's all lined up. So I have a pocket screwdriver. And I sort of just try and went down here, sort of like look through the hole where I could see, or over here. It's very hard to like look at it face on with it in the and I just put my pocket screwdriver on like the cam bolt and lined up the two dots, tooth to tooth, and made sure it's lined up. And when you do that, make sure it's perfectly lined up, is have tension on this side of the chain. Tension on this side of the chain, because the engine rotates clockwise. So there's always going to be tension over here. This is the slack side. And this is definitely less slack than the old chain. But there's also, in the front cover, this plastic piece on the tension side to make sure there's tension always on that side, so that the engine always stays within timed. You can see. This is the old plastic piece. There's really nothing wrong with this plastic piece. I'm just going to reuse it. Put it on there. See, now I'm at the point where I got to put the front main seal in, put this cover on. The bolt for the cam sprocket down there, I believe, is 50 foot-pounds. I really didn't do that. I just put it on there with an impact and red Loctite the bolt. That's what I did. Don't do exactly as I do, but that's what I did. So I am now going to put the front main in there, put that case. I want to try and get this whole thing back together. As you can see up here, fuel line's on, wiring harness is back on, my throttle. This is all back, the power steering pump's back here. My little gauge thing. So the engine's going back together. And after all this, it would just be take off the oil filter, reseal the oil adapter housing, and put the pan on, all that good stuff. But that's really quite simple on how to time one of these. Dot, dot, line up with each other. And you want tension on this side, because the engine rotates clockwise. Cleaning the gasket surface on the block. Chrysler used a paper gasket to seal it up against the block. The best way to take off a paper gasket, really, is grab a ball peen hammer and literally just whack where the gasket is sitting, because the gasket will usually just break apart and fall off. You'll get a little bit that still sticks on there, and then you just use a gasket scraper and scrape off the rest. And that's pretty much it, what I did there. So I'm going to put the new paper gasket on here. You don't want to use any Loctite. You really don't. I got a sticky spray that I'm going to use to hold the gasket in place when I put this on. So that's what I'm going to do next. Put the whole front end of the engine back together. Same as reassembly, and I'll go from there. Okay, so last time I left you off on something. It was in much more pieces than it is right now. Well, it's back together and it runs. I've already started it and ran it for a few hours. I'll show you it starting now. The oil filter adapter housing down there has been resealed. It's a T50 Torx bit that goes into there. Very hard to get to, but there's 3 O-rings. The big one for the surface on the block, and then there's 2 on the stalk that seal in this little housing thing. Change them out with Mopar seals. That's a typical leak these things have. Coolant's in it. Coolant is bled. I have a new battery hold down on here. What else? Pretty much was just plugging everything back in, zip tying stuff up, ground cable back there, reconnected, throttle connected back up, my makeshift bracket here, which is just, I don't even know what you call that type metal. I had it laying around the garage. I just bent an L in it and put it there to hold the fuel line, because now I have this here which tells me the fuel pressure in the rail, because there's no access port on this new rail I bought. The whole accessory drives are back on, except for I don't have the electric fan over here, because the piece that holds the radiator in place right here, well, as you can see, the mounting bolts broke off in the Jeep, so I have to drill and tap them out, and then I can put this back on with a new fan shroud, electric fan. So right now, this is how it is. This is right now. It works. Seems to be running fine on all 6. There is a little bit of valve train noise, but I don't think that's that bad. There is no more like piston slap knock I hear. But what I can do now is, now that it's all put together, you know, wasn't too much more I had to do. For the first start, let me just tell you what I did. I did not have the coil pack on. There was no spark plugs in the engine. I did not disable the fuel pump because I wanted it, because there was no fuel even in this line all the way up to here, so I wanted to get fuel. So I basically cranked it with no ignition system in it for a good about minute, and then took a break, and then came out and checked the spark plug hole to see if there was fuel in it. There was fuel in it. Then I came over to here, the distribution box, unplugged that, undid the lid. There's the fuel pump right there, which is this one. Undid the fuel pump relay so then it wouldn't be washing out the cylinders, and kept cranking and cranking and cranking it until that became hard. No, didn't sound empty. It now has oil in it. So, and I did that I think like 4 times, cranked it for like a minute, and then let it rest for 2 minutes, cranked it for another minute. Basically, I cranked the ever-living crap out of it just to make sure oil was getting circulated. Then the spark plugs went in, then the coil pack went on, the fuel pump relay was back in there, and started it up. And then let it run for a few hours, bleed the cooling system, and all that good stuff. So this is ready to drive on the road, except for there are no axles in it right now. I just have my front axle that just came in that I'm putting in it, and then I have to go get another rear axle, 8/8 rear axle, because now I'm just going to 410s, which will be easier. So the engine's pretty much done other than this cradle here that I'll have to put back on, and then it's going to be getting the thing back on its own weight instead of jack stands, and then we'll take it. Then it's got to be taken for a test drive and all that. But let me show you it running. Let me just show you it starting and running, and basically the end result of my in-frame rebuild. So let's do that. I'll set you up somewhere. The sucking sound is because there's no air filter on it. That's the idle air control valve over here. See, it's running. Running pretty good. That lifter noise is actually going away more and more it runs. So it's cool, as long as I don't wipe out the cam and or lifter and it goes away and I don't hear any lifter tap or lost in power or a dead hole because of a bad lifter. That would be great. These new motor mounts don't make this thing move at all. About 45 to 50 psi. That's about right for this. Low washer solvent. That's what the light's on. There's no check engine light. Dead dog cold. The oil I have in this is 10W30, just regular oil. I'm not gonna run this oil for very long. I probably will still change it with another 1030. Maybe I'll go 530. I don't know. Depends on the oil pressure. Now, as of right now, even though the engine's up to temperature, when the oil gets even hotter, at idle, I think the spec is 13 psi oil pressure. This has about 10 to 15. It's right around there, it hasn't gone below 10. So, again, the crank probably should have been cut, but also I'm reusing the cam bearings because the cam bearings you have to change when you have the block out. So, I didn't change the cam, I didn't move the cam. The cam remained where it was with the same cam bearings in it. So, more than likely it would have been the crank, but as you can see, the oil pressure, as the oil is getting warmer, it is dropping. But as soon as you snap the throttle or give it RPM, oil pressure comes right up to 40. We're about at 35 psi of oil pressure. Show you what I mean by gains oil pressure as the RPM increases. Looks like the thermostat opened up and it now dropped a few degrees. It is now at 30 psi oil pressure. I don't hear any abnormal noises. Seems to be working good. You actually feel the engine a lot more with these motor mounts. Oil pressure keeps dropping. Gotta check the coolant. Make sure it's fine. Oh, we got so much shit in here. There's some in there. We're good. Yep, that hot. Goes hot. That pressure in the system, yep, that's hot. I am not going to open this because there is pressure in the system. But it seems like it's doing okay. See oil flowing up there. Got a little bit of blow by. That's to be expected. Well, there's no more knock. At about 20 psi. I saw it go lower the last time I ran it. Yeah, it's slowly going lower. Probably because the oil is heating up more and more. We're at 210. It's slowly going down. Like, I don't think it's going to go any below 10. 10's okay at idle. Because as soon as you give it RPM, you're going to see oil pressure back. It's at 1500 and we're already back at 40. Yeah, it's about at 15 right now. I just don't want to drop below 10 at idle. 10 is good enough for me. I could go thicker, but don't really want to. I'd be putting diesel oil in this thing if I went thicker. It's sticking around like about 15 area, so that's pretty good. Not even stabilizing. Or the oil might have gotten a little bit hot when I was bleeding the cooling system, but that's good enough for me. There you go. As you can see, it runs on all 6. So far, I haven't seen it leak. Blow by is minimum. This one's kind of long as just it's running, but it's just to show you that this can work depending on the condition of the engine before you do this. I am hearing a little bit of valve freeing noise, but whatever. I'm not too concerned about it. This, I'm just going to state, this I only did to save the motor. Or down the road, I want to do a 4.6 or 4.7 stroker motor with this block, and it'd be cheaper of me just machining this block than me having to go to a junkyard or find an engine to have a good core to build an engine. Because if the piston let go, it would have busted this block up real bad. And that was the idea with doing this, is to avoid that. New pistons, the pistons shouldn't fail now. So, there you have it. The Jeep Inframe is done. I'm going to drill and tap those holes, and the engine's pretty much finished. So there you go. I'll see you in the next one, if I make one about the front axle or whatever. Alright. Take care.